Are we seeing starts of the new epidemic or the new pandemic? Well, today we're going to talk about a new strain that is all of a sudden on the scenes. You remember those investments that Biden and Fauci and some of those made years ago? Well, there's a new report that should startle you. Also, we're going to discuss a little bit more about the USAID funding. What actually were they doing? It's almost like espionage, because what you're seeing is them manipulating media, working with intel, and actually you'd be surprised where else you see their logos when you start seeing exactly where this money was funneling. I think by Elon and Doge doing what they're doing, the risk of the dangers of now the bureaucracy, I believe is supposed to get more intense for Trump and Elon and all the ones like them, because what they're doing now is they are debilitating what we consider the deep state. We're going to discuss that. Also, we're going to discuss how this is starting to be pushed all around the world, even with all the good things happening. New signs that Europe and some of this global push that we help fund, and it will blow your mind what else we pay for USAID paid for WEF. But what we're going to see is they're promising they're going to give this to children, and you won't believe how many they're wanting to give. We'll discuss all this and a few more stories. Let's jump into the video today. Hey guys, welcome to The Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to our channel, please go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up. It does mean the world to us, and we humbly ask that you do that if you enjoy the content of today, and also that we get something out of it. Our goal is to be wise and to have a common sense approach to the stories that we're hearing, but also to help us grow together as we try to navigate this crazy world that we're living in. Now let's jump into these stories. First, let's jump into this new pandemic scare. Now, you've heard about the bird flu. That's nothing new. But there is a new story to it. A new story from ABC and shared by Maureen Fall. It says, bird flu mutates. New strain found in the U.S. dairy cows for the first time. For the first time, a second type of bird flu known as the D1.1 has been detected in the U.S. dairy cows, according to the USDA. Until now, only the B313 strain has been found in herds. This is the one that was causing all the problems before. But now it's mutated. The D1.1 has been linked to human infections, including a Louisiana patient. This is the one we talked about with the fact of the spreading to human cases. Now again, how did it mutate? Why did it mutate? This goes back to the funding that we may have been pushing to mutating it. It's unbelievable. I don't think it's learning anything and gaining knowledge and wisdom. I actually think it's bioweapons. But I digress. The discovery signals a new spillover from wild birds and poultry, raising fresh concerns about the potential risk in both livestock and humans. Now, why should we be worried about this strain? Well, we've seen the fact that they've killed off a few duck farms to a point where they're not existent anymore. We've seen that they've taken out wild poultry, wild geese, wild turkeys in several forests in several states now. We see now that Colorado, California, Louisiana, Georgia, you're starting to see they're shutting down chicken, goose, duck, and livestock dairy farms. Now, how does this affect you? The cheapest proteins that men take in, that nature gives us, that us as human beings take in: eggs, milk, meat, beef. Well, eggs go with chicken, dairy is beef, and of course milk production. And of course we have red meat and chicken meat from it as well. Take those things out. Take those two animals out of any person's diet, and what do you have? Not a lot of chance for natural proteins. I mean, you could throw fish in there, but most of the world doesn't live right by the water. So what we're seeing now is a chance where they can change the whole food system, all because mutation. What if it's not about hurting us per se? What if the goal was not actually to cause harm to humans? I mean, you may get an occasional sick ones here and there, but what if that wasn't the case? What's the next worst way to hurt the human? Food system. Maybe this was a war on the food the whole time. Maybe we were all wrong that we thought it was coming for us when it comes to the bird flu. What if we just realized it was meant to hurt our protein, hurt our natural food source? You're starting to see states and ordinances where it's against the chicken and egg, not having backyard poultry. You're starting to see the fact that meat is getting so extremely expensive because people can't raise livestock anymore. I told you just the last few weeks how I leased more land to put more cattle on, and to be honest with you, it's amazing how much cattle cost now, so I've not bought any new cattle because it's just not worth it for me as the farmer anymore. When cows cost 4 times what they did just 2 or 3 years ago, and it's not going down yet. I thought it would. I was wrong. It's not. So now we're pricing ourselves out of beef. Now we see that the dairy industry and the beef industry and the egg production, which is, remember, eggs and chicken were the cheapest produce and the cheapest way to have protein, natural protein, in the world for the last 100 years, is now going to be untouchable because of pricing and shortages. What happens when you ruin the natural food system and the independence part of the food system? It makes it where you're more dependent on someone else to provide it. In steps all these companies that are producing this manufactured food, more food that has chemicals laced in it, more food that has all this additives to make it seem like you're eating whatever you thought you were supposed to be eating. What we're seeing is a breakdown of our food system, and what we see actually with this pandemic or epidemic may have nothing to do with you and me, as in making us sick or not. It may have everything to do with our food system and our grocery stores. If you can't afford the food, or the food is not allowed to get to you because of shortages and problems, or the fact of all the outbreak that's going around with farms, and you're not raising your own food, who do you rely on? You rely on the government to provide food. Well, what we've realized with government providing food, they're not providing nutritional food. We've talked about that before. So we're becoming fully engulfed with a government who is not providing us good quality food, and then also us not growing food and providing our own. What happens next? I go back to biblical times, and I think of Joseph and how, he saw the bad years. He had good years, and then he saw the bad years, basically, with food and the famine. Well, this right here could easily cause a famine. Do you realize, and again, as a farmer and regenerative farmer, that chicken and that cow on lands produces the grasses and produces the fertilization we're needing. It produces the natural reoccurring of our vegetation to still grow. If we take the chicken and cow out of that production, that means more synthetics will be needed. More chemicals will be needed. Our ground needs more trash put in it to produce whatever we're trying to get back out of it that's been modified. All of a sudden we're making barren lands, and we're taking the only animals that can heal the lands back off of it because of this, and now we put ourselves in a Great Depression or famine. You don't believe it can happen? Read up on actually how the fertilization works and regenerative ag works with the cow and chicken. And when we start taking those away from agriculture and start taking those away from natural ruminants such as the cow, or the natural fertilization such as the chicken, what we realize is we're making a barren land. And when we're so dependent as a nation and as a world dependent on someone else to grow our food, to provide our food, then we will go from independence to begging for government to fix it. Well, if the government has barren land, what do? They mass produce food in a factory. Now you may say, Colby, you're crazy. You're going way too far with all this. Am I though? When the fact is, the cow and the chicken providing food, protein, natural sources, cheap meat is now not producing any of that. Let's see how that actually comes for us. Can you grow enough stuff to suffice? Hopefully. But the bottom line is, this is where now more than ever, you need to find a local farmer who's trying to grow this stuff, and you support him as much as you can. Because it's going to come down to the farmer to be able to take care of us as Americans. If we're not growing our own food, you better find someone who is, and you better support them the best you can. Now let's talk about the USAID. That's been in the discussions, and I really hadn't talked much about it because everybody else is talking about it, but the thing that really came out yesterday really chapped me. What we saw as of yesterday's release with Elon and with Trump's administration getting more clearances to get to this funding is we realized that the CIA and USAID were working hand in hand to go against Trump in 2020. We also realized that liberal media, Politico, got a few $1 million. We see that legacy media as a whole, leftist legacy media, got tons of bailouts from the USAID. Not 1 ounce of it went to conservative media, or to at least just middle of the road media. Now, if that happened with the conservatives, if there was, funds going to the conservatism, it would be up in arms. People would be going crazy right now. But that didn't happen. Now, here's my biggest fear. We see this, and we see there's a problem. We see that there was funding going to terror. We see there was funding going to the CIA to manipulate the American people. We see there was funding going to legacy media. We see there was funding going to the WEF. Do you know how much the WEF got? WEF, the Forum, Klaus Schwab's people. They got $68 million of taxpayer funding through the USAID. So you wonder why Elon and Trump went towards the USAID first. Most people didn't understand. And when you hear USAID, this is what people think. They say USAID. Well, that's meant to help us. That is all a scam. That's why they named it the USAID, to make you think that it's actually working for the Americans to help people across the world. That is not the case of the USAID. Actually, what it was doing was going to harm you as Americans. The global push by the WEF that we've been trying to push against so far got money over the last few years of $68 million. Unbelievable. We funded tons of stuff. I mean, you can go look at the reports that Elon did and Doge did of how much of your taxpayer dollars were wasted on the most frivolous things or the things that actually cause you more harm as Americans. Now, here's the problem. The Democrats, the bureaucracies are up in arms that they are getting this money released and that the USAID is not going to allow for more money to be spent. Also, USAID had tons of ties to leftists and Democratic strategists. It had tons of ties to how to manipulate conservatism. Now, here's the problem. You can't get that money back. You see the money we've wasted as a nation. It makes me absolutely sick to my stomach. Sick to my stomach that we've wasted so many hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, almost trillions of dollars in waste that we will never see as a taxpayer once again. Here's where I think the government should go from this point on. And this is where Trump, I think, should hit. You need a tariff, and you need to cut the bureaucratic class to where Americans do not have to pay income tax. Americans do not have to pay state tax. Americans do not have to pay anything but a consumer or a flat tax of some sort, to where when they buy something or when the need is there, that we support it because of the waste of our taxpayer-funded situations. I would love to see lawyers come up with a class action against the government, against USAID, against some of these bureaucratic classes, because what we should see is that they literally stole our money. It's amazing how many people we arrest for Ponzi schemes. We've done this for white-collar crimes for the last hundreds of years, and we've put people in prison because of their Ponzi schemes, quote-unquote Ponzi schemes. However, our government is running one. Now, this is not the Trump administration running one. They're exposing it. But the fact is that your government right now, the bureaucratic class, all these departments, even down to your elected officials, are pushing for this funding to keep on going. So that means they're still wanting to spend your money. There should be lawyers to make a class action lawsuit against the people that support this, the people that voted for it, the people that voted for this kind of funding. There should be a class action lawsuit against them. There should be a class action lawsuit for all taxpayers to get a settlement to where there's no income tax for amount of years because of the waste and frivolous spending that our government has done. It's either revolution or lawsuit. This should be a lawsuit easily. So I would love to see someone stand against what's going on, because it makes me sick to my stomach to think that, like, for instance, so Elon Musk is trying to save us money. Trump is trying to save us money. Doge is trying to save us money. All rich billionaires not working for a penny. They're not making a penny off this. They're doing this. And here's what I hate. Is the fact that there are lawmakers up in the streets telling people to take to the streets for them not being able to waste your taxpayer dollars. How in the world are we supporting these liberal people to keep saying that they want to keep spending your money for things that are frivolous? There was USAID posters all across the world behind terror organizations, behind UN and WEF and the WHO. They were funding things that would blow your mind. And we were doing it. When we start getting to the bottom of the problem, I think you're going to see a lot more pushback. And the next is Department of Education. The next is the Treasury. Elon just got clearances to go into the Treasury. Now some people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we gave him clearances. Well, if he wants to find waste, he's going to find it, and it's going to blow your mind probably what the waste is going to be once we actually get into the Treasury to see all the $36 trillion that we're in debt. The fact that we're making $4 or $5 trillion on taxpayers a year, and they spend too much and they can't get on a written budget. I think you're going to start seeing why these congressmen and these senators are so flippin' rich. I think it's funny, AOC, who was a bartender in the Bronx, or Queens, wherever it is, poor and couldn't, not very smart. There was a report yesterday that came out that she was worth $30 million. Okay, so she's been in Congress for what, 10 years or less. They make $100,000, $150,000 a year. So at the most, if she never spent any money, she may have $1 million, may have $700,000. If she never spent one flipping dollar of her annual income, she would be worth $500,000 to $700,000. And you're telling me she's worth $30 million? How does that happen? So I think when we start actually digging into these projects and these bills and these cabinet positions and these bureaucratic classes and the fact of all these departments, you're going to start seeing the waste is actually because what they're doing is funneling your taxpayer dollars and building a Ponzi scheme to basically take your money. I hope lawyers stand up and they make a class action lawsuit against our own government. Last thing I want to talk about is the fact that even though we're trying to do so well, and there's a sign of really no one's pushing against Trump because he is literally doing what he wants to do. Like for instance, we're not going to the G20 summit. Marco Rubio is going to have nobody there because of South Africa and what they're doing, because of all these negotiations that's taking place. Panama Canal allows our ships to go free through there, the Navy ships to go free through there, which saves us hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Big things are happening. But still, there's dangers. I want you to listen to this. In partnership with Bill Gates, the EU boss, Ursula von der Leyen, the same person that's been over the EU and been for this global push, still believes that she can put this into 500 million kids by 2030. Now, what they're going to say is, well, we need to make sure our kids are healthy. So let's give them several sets of these. Even with the pushback, even with the fact of people like RFK getting in government, even with the fact that people are starting to wake up to the dangers, even to the fact that we realize that taxpayer dollars has been going to this global push and WHO has been cut off, and now all of a sudden we see that WEF is getting all this money from USAID, we see that we're stopping a lot of this problem. Even though that you see all these billionaires coming and they're saying they're going to support Trump. Google came out and said that they're going to cut back on some of the stuff they've been doing with DI. You see that Amazon's doing it. Mark Zuckerberg's doing it. There's still a report that they will push on in the global push of control. 500 million kids by 2030 will have that. Who's funding it? WHO, EU, Bill Gates. So even though we're doing good things, there's still bad players in this world. And what it's going to do is we've got to look at the fact that, what did we talk about today? What have we talked about in this video right now? Your health, your food, your safety, and your livelihood, your money. There's so many good things still happening. However, there's still a risk at all those things. Gold is skyrocketing right now. What that usually means is there's a problem in the world with the financial currencies. And even though Trump's doing good things, like I've told you, before Trump got in power, that there will be a global financial issue go on because we cannot keep spending like we're doing. Yes, I love the fact that Doge is cutting money, $1 billion a day. Do you realize we're in a deficit of about 1.4 trillion? I'm sorry. The only way we're going to balance our budget is if we start cutting hundreds of billions of dollars a month. Not just 30 or 40 billion. Yes, steps in the right direction. But until we get on steady ground, we're on a sinking ship. We're still teeter-tottering in a bad sea. And just like yesterday with Pam Bondi, she said that we're going to release the Epstein list. We're gonna clean up this. We're going to stop the problems in our government. I love that. I think that's great. RFK, Tulsi, everybody looks like they're going to get confirmed. But they better work tirelessly and hard, because what we're seeing is they're going to have to fight a big flipping class of bureaucracy that's going to try to stop them. You know, you can cut frivolous spending, but when you start hurting people's livelihoods, like some of these senators and congressmen, and like the USAID, that has affected more people than ever. Did you know that most of the left agenda would have been stopped if USAID was not funding them? Did you know most of those companies couldn't have made it? Most of those publications could not have made it without USAID funding. The fact that WEF got more power because of all the hundreds of millions of dollars we poured to them with funding that Americans probably didn't even know they were getting. We talked about food, money, your safety, your livelihood, and the fact that there's still a war going against us to take control. I want you to be ready for whatever comes. So why do I tell you to push towards supporting local farmers or learn to grow your own food? Because that takes the independence to a point where you can't be dependent on a system to have preserved food or chemical-laced food. You control that. Secondly, money. You can't help the taxes that you're paying. I'd love to see a class action lawsuit like I told you before. But also we could do better in making sure that we are getting on a steady budget to where we stockpile things that bring value to our homes. That means getting on a written budget. That means making sure that you have maybe a home that's getting paid for, that you're not in piles of debt, so you're not put in bad situations. Thirdly, get in control of your health. Make sure that you are doing some kind of exercise a day, walking. Make sure that you are trying to eat a better balanced diet. Make sure that you are trying to incorporate a healthier lifestyle without a lot of medications. Because remember, in the tariff wars, we're going to probably face some problems with medications because most of that comes from overseas. And then fourthly, keep your leaders accountable. Love to see what's happening in Washington. But you got to remember, you send senators and congressmen each and every year up to Washington to basically take advantage of you. It's time to get some of these people out. Mitch McConnell has been pushing against Trump all along the way. Trump won the state of Kentucky by like 30%. Why is McConnell still in leadership? Cornyn has pushed against Trump a lot. Why is he still in the Senate for Texas? We see this with Murkowski, Collins, Thune. We see this with a lot of other people. We see this with our local cities, our supervisors, our aldermen. It's time to hold our leaders accountable, because what we're doing is we're sending them to Washington to take our money. We're sending them to the state capitals to take our money. We're sending them to our city boards to take our money and take our tax dollars to ultimately make more regulation on you and to control you more. We probably wouldn't have had a outbreak like we're seeing that we just talked about if there wasn't government funding for the change in the manipulation of mutation. We probably wouldn't see the fact that our dollars falling to pieces if they have not spent all this money. We wouldn't see rich Congress and rich senators if there was no such thing as lobbyists and backroom deals. So all this stuff is caused by us not being aware and being wise. So now it's our time to hold our leaders accountable by becoming wise, by becoming more independent, by understanding that sometimes people are not out to help you. It means you need to help yourself. And when we start taking care of ourselves and being more independent, being more sustainable, then we start seeing, I think, with a better open eye to see what's going on around us. Guys, pay attention to what's going on. Food system, money, accountability, control, and holding your leaders accountable. That's what we talked about today. Get control of it, and it starts by you taking care of your household first. And when you start fixing your household, you'll start fixing your community, you'll start fixing your state, and ultimately we'll start fixing our country. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this video. God bless.